Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. This is Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. And I'm going to tell you, Ken, it's nice to be doing a show where we actually get to talk about some wins and some good things. And there was a lot of it to talk about in that show. Clearly, people are fired up for this win, as they should be. I mean, this looked a lot more like the Winnipeg Jets team we'd come to know earlier in the season. What's your take on the game?
Yeah, Sean, I mean, obviously an important step forward for the Jets, no doubt about that. I mean, I'm not sure it was quite perfect or pristine, but I mean, I think the important elements were there. I mean, their offense wasn't crazy in terms of generation, but they were very opportunistic and they were, most importantly, they were very clean defensively. Yes, it was a 32 save performance for Connor Hellebuyck. He was dialed in, but he wasn't overly under siege. It wasn't one of those 32 shot nights where he had, 12 or 13 grade A scoring chance saves that he had to make. Having said that, I thought he was very sharp when he needed to be. And again, the Jets, some of the issues that they had been having, power play, scored, special
Yeah.
teams, shorthanded goal. So, and again, I think probably the most important part of the game for the Jets was how efficient their defense was. Obviously, Pionk and Morrissey very solid together, and I thought that again, Ville Heinola we've talked about a lot. I thought he was excellent tonight. I mean, again, not overly flashy, but he did all of the important things that he needed to do to earn another look. And Paul Maurice was quite forthcoming in terms of his feelings on that matter. He said flat out that he did deserve another chance and he'll get another look. So again, his efficiency in terms of his exits is such an important quality at a time when the Jets were really having some issues in that area. So, and again, the other thing too, I mean, we've talked about the importance of the Scheifele-Wheeler line. I mean, that goal coming out of the box, going to the backhand, that was more of a vintage Blake Wheeler kind of move,
Yes.
power drive to the far post. And again, that's not an easy backhand to roof from in tight. So I think that was an important thing for him. 800 NHL points. We know numbers don't really matter to him, but that's a big, big number. 800 NHL points is a big
Oh,
number.
yeah.
And, in terms of Scheifele getting his 500, that's an important point for him as well.
Hey, I want to give a shout out to Terry M here, who had got so frustrated during that 7 game losing streak that he had self banned himself from our show. He said he was so certain they were going to win one night. He said, "Yep, if they don't win, I'm banning myself from Kenny and Renny." And
Welcome back, Terry.
I
Welcome
pleaded
back.
and begged with him to come back on the show. And I thought it was falling on deaf ears, but here he is. Just took a win to bring him back out. It's good to see you back, Terry. You talked earlier, and I thought it was funny because during that losing streak, Paul Maurice had said something along the lines of, we just got to get the PP going, the PK going, and 5-on-5. Other than that, we're doing fine, right? Basically, every element of the game was not working for them at one point. On this night, every element of the game was working. And I want to kind of get your opinion on this because the penalty kill, which had been bad, contributes, shuts them entirely down, and manages to come away with a goal. They get a nice power play goal, other than the two Flames players kind of running into each other and creating the opportunity. But 5-on-5, really over the last however many games, I think what was it? They've allowed
Three
three
goals in
5-on-5
four
goals
games.
in the
Yep.
last 4 games, and really. I mean, if I'm trying to pick one of those to focus on most, I probably pick the 5-on-5 just because that has been this team's weakness for so much of the year, something that they've got through and erased with their special teams. For you, I guess maybe break down the importance of getting all three of them going.
Oh man, just critical. I mean, Sean, this is part of the reason I was trying to preach patience in the pregame show, where again we understand the frustration, but things can turn pretty quickly. I mean, the Leafs went from a 5 game losing skid to taking full control of the division, and again we know this is only step one in terms of the Jets getting ready for Game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. But it was an important step for all the reasons that you mentioned. I mean. How about the backhand move by Adam Lowry on the shorthanded marker? I mean, there have been some folks, in our chat room that have been talking about his hands on certain occasions this year. And hey, 10 goals in a shortened season is a pretty good year for a guy who missed some time with injury. This is a guy that scored a lot of goals in the Western Hockey League, and that's a really patient goal. And again, Markstrom overplayed the first one, but guess what? Adam Lowry put it in a perfect spot. So, again, we know that the Flames are not going to the playoffs in all likelihood. Is that level high enough to beat the Oilers or the Maple Leafs in a 7-game series? I mean, maybe not, but it was an important step for them. There's no doubt about that. And as you mentioned, the 5-on-5 play has improved dramatically since that 6-1 blowout where the Jets were, basically all 6 goals were off the rush. You can't give up rush chances like that and expect to win a series. The Jets have been incredibly tight in terms of their defensive zone play, and that's how they're going to have to play in order to try to have success against somebody. So, like I said, it's one step, but it was an important step. And like I've been saying from the beginning, one step doesn't cure everything for the Jets, nor did 7 losses in a row take away some of the goodwill that they had built in that reservoir during the course of the season.
I mean, you talked about whether or not this is a game that is going to be able to have them beat teams like the Toronto Maple Leafs or the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, I looked at this tonight and I didn't think that I saw a very good Calgary Flames team.
No, totally.
Listen to some of their post game. They were extremely upset with their play. They said they hung their goaltender out to dry. When you're giving up, all your goals come on odd man rushes, 2 breakaways, and then a power play in which you leave, an 800-point scorer wide open alone in front of the net. It really was a bit of an ugly situation for them. I think Paul Maurice kind of hit it home when he'd said he'd expected this really hard, heavy game, kind of trial by fire, that he wanted to get Ville Heinola into to have him tested, and that game didn't materialize. I took that as, just a sign that this Flames team really did not get to their game on this evening. Did you see the same thing?
Well, I mean, I certainly don't think it was their best game, but I mean, the Flames have struggled. I mean, do they have another level? Sure. But, for the most part, I thought the Jets were tidy. I mean, this is the thing. You can only play the teams on the schedule. Again, I'm not telling anyone to plan the parade, but that was a tidy effort for the Jets. You can't worry about, there have been so many times, Sean, when the Jets have had to try to cater their game to the opponent, whereas today they sort of imposed their will on the game. In terms of that, that's what we've been talking about. That's what the Jets need to do when they're in a tough spot. I mean, that you certainly have to respect your opponent, but the Jets got back to sort of more of an identity game for them. So, again, one important step. Let's see how they respond. It's not like they can take their foot off the pedal now because they snapped the streak. Yeah, you can exhale if you're the Jets for sure. But there are certainly, again, I think that they need to raise their game another level if they want to get to the Oilers and Leafs level. Having said that, I think that's the template of what they need to do. And then I think you could probably add a little bit more on the offensive side. But again, you're not going to put up 30 shots probably in a game where it just was like that. But this is it for me, Sean. This is what I said before the game. Most important thing for the Jets going into this game was to get Connor Hellebuyck looking like Connor Hellebuyck of Vezina Trophy fame for Game 1 of a series when he's going to have to outplay Mike Smith, who's been excellent this year.
We're going to bring in our guy, Scotty Bilic from the Sun here. Writes his name as Scotty Sandstorm Bilic. I'm not sure if it's showing up in the show, but you know what? It's funny. I don't know how it happened, but I do. Every Thursday morning, I do a hit with TJ and Turnbull at 92 City FM, and they started playing Sandstorm as my intro into the show. I think just to kind of like make fun of me. Whatever, it feels totally wrong, and they're still doing it. And I just keep thinking, like, people are going to think I'm a fraud. That is clearly Scott Bilic's song. You love that song. I was okay with it. I may have done, like the sprinkler or something like that to it in the early 2000s or something like that. But I just want you to know I had nothing to do with stealing sand or trying to steal Sandstorm from you. It's yours. You can have it. I don't want it. But if you happen to hear it, just don't Don't blame it on me, Scotty. Scotty, your thoughts. We've had you on for a couple of losses here now, where you've been able to kind of take a hatchet to what the Jets have been doing. Did they have a game of substance for you tonight?
Yeah, I don't know how you could say they didn't. It wasn't the best test. I know Kenny was saying that before. I don't think it was their best test of what they can do, but I think they did what they needed to do to kind of get the win. And if you look at you kind of look at it, almost looked like this game the Jets kind of accepted what they needed to. Like the losing streak was what it was. For the first, I would say 5 games, maybe 4, they didn't really realize how to get out of it, right? And Blake Wheeler kind of said it after the game. It was very much, it's hard to keep driving the message home of playing defensive hockey, right? But they had to do it to get out of it. And I would say 3 of the 4 goals began in the defensive zone. I mean, obviously the shorthanded goal did, and not the power play one. But the other 2 obviously did. And I think it was just they played – it was a tidy game. I mean, I don't know if you really need to use another word for it. And, as much as, we've eviscerated this team over the 7-game losing streak, I think they did what they needed to do to win. Is it going to win them a playoff series? I don't think we can put that stamp on it yet. I mean, they did play the Calgary Flames, who, a team desperate for a win. They're hanging on essentially by a thread at this point. I think their tragic number is 0.5. I mean, Montreal has to get a single point, right, out of this going forward, and Calgary's done. They didn't play their best game, and like Sean said before I joined, they knew that, right? So, but you got to start somewhere, right? I think they started in the Ottawa game with limiting the shot slot, or the slot shots, and just kind of getting back to that way of playing defensive. At the end of the day, if the Jets don't accept the fact that they have to start playing, you like the flute,
guys? You're taking a ton of heat for the glass.
That's fine.
You showed up. You had a sip right off the bat.
Right? Is it gin? Is it vodka? Is it white? Or is it just water? I mean, we'll never know.
You got on, and the first thing you did was had this very sophisticated sip from your flute of water there, and you've been taking heat for it ever since. I've been trying to distract you for 5 minutes here.
I wanted to come on and stone face and then do the Kenny, right? But I couldn't do it. I just can't. I can't keep my face straight. I can't pull the Kenny. So.
Oh man, that was good too. And we've had a couple mentions
of that as well. Meme.
Like Ken, there was the one thing I love about you is when we do this show and you see a comment that shakes you or bugs you, you cannot hide it. Ken has no facial filter.
No. I don't play poker, okay? I don't play poker, you guys. There's a good reason why I do not play poker.
Yeah. Hey, if you are playing poker against Ken and he looks down at his cards and looks up like this, fold right away. Just fold, because that's exactly what is going to happen.
That's a beautiful thing.
Scotty, you brought up something interesting there. You talked about Blake Wheeler and the idea of preaching defense to an offensive team. I thought that was a really telling comment, because I think in that comment lies one of the issues this team is constantly dealing with, is the idea of that, how they like to play that offensive game where they move the puck and they pass it around and they get into it and it works for a while, and then it seems like they're playing the edges too much and it kind of falls off. We see that story time and time again. I'd like both your thoughts on this, guys, on the idea of this team and kind of fighting its own nature of just wanting to play wide open hockey and getting to a place where, Paul Maurice is trying to get them to that 5-on-5 grinding game that they feel is going to be best for them in the playoffs.
Well, and there's a difference between the way that they need to play and the way that they want to play, right? And we know the way the Jets want to play. They like the run and gun type of game. They like the speed game. They like the nifty passes and the nice setups and stuff. They're always kind of, if you watch the team, and I think what will frustrate fans the most, I think at times, is they often will get too cute with the puck and turn a chance into, basically take a chance. Oh, come on, Jeff. You love the glass. this is Jeff Hamilton to a T. If this Jeff loves luxury. Come on. Anyways, but I think I think what Blake Wheeler said was honest. I mean, I think it's just they have to play a defensive game if they want to win. It's not going to be the game that they want to play, but it's going to be the game that they have to play. And if they can accept that in the next 4 games, the reigning games, I think. I'm not going to say there's a chance that they beat Edmonton or Toronto just yet, because I mean we can't just take one win over a team that barely showed up to play tonight and say this whole ship is turned around. It's not. And, this is I think the Jets are still kind of stuck in the Suez Canal, right? Like there is still that problem, and they need to figure it out, and they got to figure it out quickly. But if they can play the game they played tonight, they will at least give themselves, I think, a chance. I didn't think that Connor Hellebuyck had to be amazing tonight. He had to be good, but he was big and boring and back to the way that, the Jets want him to play. Yes, he saw 30-plus shots tonight. He saw, I think, 3 slot shots total in that game. I mean, that's, again, if you can keep the guys out of the slot and reduce those chances, especially against Edmonton and Toronto, where you're going to have to give up some, right? Yeah. I'll tell you, I'll tell a story one day about a royal flush. But anyways, it's the reason why I stopped playing poker. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I think the Jets have, they have to accept the fact that they need to play a certain style of game. It's not what they want to play. It doesn't really matter at this point. If you want to win the playoffs, they have to play that game. This isn't 2017-18. It's not 2018-19, like even Blake Wheeler alluded to after the game. That's not this team. This team needs to play a different style of game if they want to win.
But that team was also committed defensively. We saw it.
Right.
The crazy part about the Jets that year, guys, and we saw it on a daily basis, the Jets were one of the only teams in the NHL that worked on 5-on-5 at every single morning skate for the last basically 3 months of the year, at a time when most teams aren't even bothering going on the ice. So for sure, they have to be committed. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, the Jets aren't a wide open team. They do score off the rush. I wouldn't wear one. That's the answer
Kenny's
to that
a Jays
one.
fan. The Jays. Kenny loves mediocrity. So it's okay.
I want to say this. I'm so happy in a Jets win tonight for this fact. Our chat room is so buoyant and effervescent, and everyone's having a good time. We're having such a hard time talking hockey because we keep getting derailed. I know some people will be listening on the podcast tomorrow morning and they won't be seeing this, but it's just great comment after great comment, and they're taking a piece of us with every single comment here and having a good time, and it's making it hard to focus. But one of the things that people have been focusing on, and Ken, we can come back to that point if you didn't get it all out, or did you have more to say on that?
No, it's totally fine. I just I want to get to Hellebuyck here.
Okay,
let's go to goaltending right now, and we've discussed this a lot. And yeah, some folks think that Hellebuyck should rest. I disagree completely. I think that Hellebuyck needs, what is it now? There's 5 left. He needs 4 for me.
4 left.
4 left. So I think he gets 3 games. You give Lauren Brissois the back end of the back-to-back. I think that some people will say don't bother playing him against Toronto. I disagree. I think that Hellebuyck is going, because there's going to be a break before the playoffs begin. Hellebuyck is going to want to be in that game against Toronto, and I don't think for 1 second the Leafs seeing him one more time has any impact on a potential playoff series. I think he plays 4 or 3 of the next 4. Lauren Brissois gets 1 game, and the Jets get ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, sorry. I just want to. I think that Toronto game is going to be a good litmus test. I know I was on earlier in the season about, how do they match up and stuff. I'm going to eat crow on that. I mean, the Jets just haven't matched up, well. Well, I wouldn't say against Toronto. Toronto, they've played well a couple times with Edmonton. But I think that game is going to be the one where it's like, okay, can they do it against Toronto in a game that's it's essentially going to be a meaningless game in terms, probably a meaningless game, at least for Toronto. So we'll see what Toronto brings out against the Jets. But I think it'll be an important game either way for the mentality of the Jets, one way or another, heading into the postseason.
See, and I wonder about that. And I mean, I guess, you want to get a lick in against a team that you could potentially see.
I'm not saying you could win or lose. I just think style, right? Like, I just think that, like, you have to go into that game. And I don't think Toronto's going to come in that game saying, oh, we don't. Like, I think Toronto, if especially if they're it's a possibility that the Jets play them. They'll want to put a pasting to them too, I think. I mean, I think there is part of that. There is some gamesmanship here. I mean, these are dressing rooms full of egos, right? You want to win games.
And
Yeah,
one thing too, hang one quick one, Sean, before you hop in. I've been listening to a lot of the talk on 590, and the Leafs have limped towards the playoffs significantly in the last couple, even dating back to when Mike Babcock was the head coach. So they don't want. They're going to get some rest in for sure, but they want to be sharp going in. So I do think it's a game where I think they could have. I think two teams want to go head to head. No, it doesn't mean, bro. Probably won't have a big impact on the standings like we thought it might 2 weeks ago. But I think they should play Hellebuyck in that game, and I expect the Leafs are going to play the majority of their players. They may rest one or two guys if there are some, minor injuries, but I think that you're going to see, unlike some years where those are the games where you test drive whatever you want. I think both teams, especially because of what the discussion is like. The American playoffs will start before the playoffs in the North Division. I don't think teams are going to want to go, 8 to 10 days without playing an important game.
Yeah, see, I was going to say, I agree with you there in that I think that's what may change things this year, in that they may want to try and get some hockey in, depending on how big of a break there is. But I'm going to tell you this, if I'm Sheldon Keefe and I dress Austin Matthews for that game and he gets injured against another team that's in the playoffs, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that ends up being the first nail in your coffin on your career in a city. I'll be honest, I don't see them putting much of an effort in there for exactly what we're talking about here. They've got a good feeling against the Winnipeg Jets. They feel like they've got their game down against them. They don't want to give the Jets any reason to think that they've created some kind of pattern of success against them heading into the playoffs. And I don't think they need a good feeling from the Jets as much as the Jets need a good feeling from them. So why not deny the Jets any kind of good feeling by taking anyone who matters out of the lineup? That's the way I would think that's going to play out. People want to talk about Heinola. So let's get to that. Ken, your thoughts on how he played tonight?
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. I thought he was solid. Obviously not massive minutes, but I thought he did everything that he needed to do in order to get another look, which is, again, what I've been saying. I understand that people wanted to see him more. I wanted to see him more also. But what I was impressed by was his ability to move the puck, the clean exits through the middle, his ability to put himself into position, make smart reads, don't play careless, but be aggressive. Like, that's the one thing about Heinola. He's not a big guy. He engages physically. He puts himself in positions where he knows that he's going to have to get leverage because he's not bigger than most players he's battling for the puck with. He holds the line well. I thought that, it was a solid pairing with DeMello. Got involved and a little bit active at times. And basically, again, played with no fear without being careless. That's the perfect formula for Ville Heinola to earn more looks and to potentially convince the coaching staff that it's worth the risk putting him into the lineup. And I only use the word risk because he's a young player. We know he's played pro in Finland. We know he's not just a kid.
Get away from that.
He's 20 years old. He's 20 years old. He's inexperienced at the NHL level, Scott. That's the truth. But again, the things that he does can help the Winnipeg Jets. He showed it again today. I think he should get a chance to do it again on Saturday, and then we'll see what the last 3 games bring. Because again, the things that the Jets have struggled with against the Oilers, he can help nullify some of those challenges.
Yes.
Scott, before you go, I just want to touch on this point. Robert Starr says Heinola used his body very well tonight. Positioning was very good. What he does really interesting as a smaller player is he's like a magnet to a guy's chest. So instead of waiting for a guy to come and build up on him, what he does is he skates to the guy, curls in front of him in the area that he wants to go to, and then just slows him down. It's a really interesting tactic. I haven't seen a lot of players use it before, but he used it brilliantly and effectively tonight. And I just want to make this point before we go on, before you take your run at the Heinola situation, Scotty. Ken, at the beginning of the show, I said I thought that this whole competition, if that's what it's supposed to be, this tryout is over. I thought that Jordy Ben had this spot. I got to say, the way Heinola played tonight, I'm fully on board with you now. I think that if there's not a look at potentially him stepping into that 6th spot and occupying one of the spots on the defense going into the playoffs, there definitely should be after what we saw tonight. Although, Scotty, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah.
Paul Maurice didn't make it sound as though he saw what we were seeing tonight and thought, there you go, he brought everything that I needed. He kind of downplayed the performance tonight.
Yeah, and I probably should downplay it if you're the head coach. Like, you don't want to make it seem like I don't know. It's an interesting thing that Paul Maurice said. I thought Paul Maurice has gushed a lot, and I know gush is the word that he hates because I used it a couple times with him, and he would get upset. Well, I don't know if upset, but he doesn't like the word gush. And so, but he's been guilty of gushing about Ville Heinola before, and probably creating some of the hype with this kid, especially last year during training camp, right? And he was there, he was battling Blake Wheeler. I mean, he was getting body position in there, that sort of thing, right? Like, those were the things that he was doing back then. He reminds me a little bit of Toby Enstrom in the way that he uses the smaller frame, but still can do it effectively, right? And I think that's one of the things with a smaller guy, and I think we use that term now probably more than we need to. I don't consider Ville Heinola undersized in the way, because undersized, to me, is a negative connotation and means a guy with that stature can't keep up in the NHL. I think anytime we've seen Ville Heinola play, he's kept up in the NHL. Has he struggled? Sure. I mean, there's been times, that happens. I mean, he's still a rookie, right? I mean, this kid still hasn't really nailed down hasn't nailed down a spot yet as a full-time defenseman in the NHL. But to your point on some of the comments in here, like I think he has what it takes in a way that he's not putting himself in bad situations as a smaller defenseman. He's, like you said, Shawnee, the magnet thing, right? Like, he's getting on into plays. He's not getting beat on them. He's actually, putting himself in a position where he will win the puck battle. And then when he gets the puck on a stick, I mean, it's quick. The vision is there with him. Yeah, well, that might be better for him in that case. But, I think the vision of Ville Heinola is just as good. And maybe it isn't, but I thought the positioning tonight was the most impressive thing. Yeah. We know that Ville Heinola can move the puck. We don't need to be reaffirmed that he can do that. We know that's a very, integral part of his game. I think the biggest question is, especially if Paul Maurice is going to play him in the playoffs, is going to be, can you deal with Auston Matthews? Can you deal with, maybe you're not playing against Auston Matthews all the time, but there are going to be times, especially on the road, where you're going to want to be matching up, if you're Sheldon Keefe or if you're Dave Tippett, your top lines. So can Ville Heinola deal with that pressure? And I think this kid has always shown that he can deal with the pressure. I think that's one of the things that we noticed about him early on, especially last season, is that he was able to handle, like we talked about this he had kind of cold blood, right? Ice in his veins. I think that's also been a pillar of his game. And so I don't think they really have to worry about that. I think the biggest thing he needs to be able to do is get body position on guys and that sort of thing. Yeah, he took a penalty tonight. I don't think the penalty was whatever. I mean,
it's a terrible call. No,
it's a weird call, right? Like it's
Monahan went down like he got shot. I mean,
well, and I think when we talked about this in the press box, like some of these interference, Dylan DeMille was great at doing the interference, right? Without doing the interference, like doing enough, but not enough to get the penalty, right? I think Ville Heinola probably gets less benefit of the doubt in that sense. But I think. Yeah, I think I don't want to. You don't want to put the horse or the cart before the horse here when it comes to Billy. But he's shown a lot, and I think Logan Stanley too should be in the running too. I mean, but I also didn't. I mean, was Forbert and Tucker Pullman bad for you guys tonight? Like, I didn't think the pairing was horrible. I don't know if it was great either. But I just felt that there was, I don't know, there may be just more cohesiveness on the blue line. I know some people are going to say that advanced statistics don't show that. I mean, it's been one game with these types of pairings. So, but yeah, going back to Ville, I think he just played a great game. And Maurice said it. I think the biggest compliment that Maurice gave Ville is that he certainly earned another shot, right? I mean, so whether or not he's gushing about him, the fact that he earned another game is, I think, the biggest compliment that you're going to receive from a head coach that often does favor veteran players.
And again, one quick thing too. I mean, as steady as that pairing was, I mean, the most important thing for the Jets is the way that Neil Pionk and Josh Morrissey are playing together. And one of the ways that you can keep them together is by having another puck mover like Heinola in the lineup. So that's a far bigger thing for me. And that's not to diminish the potential impact that Heinola is going to have. But for me, it's been a revolving door on the top pairing. And right now, Pionk and Morrissey can help each other. And that's exactly what they've done when they've been used together. So I think that's even more of an important development when it comes to the back end.
Guys, let's talk about Lowry, because
one quick thing. Sorry, a couple people have been saying, wondering about the puck. Well, Blake Wheeler said that Scheifele can have the puck, so they won't have to cut it in half. They won't have to make a photocopy of it. It's going to go to Scheifele for point number 500.
Well, and if we're talking about that, we have to talk about how indifferent he was to scoring 800 goals tonight. He made it sound and look. Yeah, but like it was absolutely meaningless to him that he had the 800 points. And I mean, in true captain speak, you want to talk about, what matters the most. It's not personal accolades. For him, it was, getting them off the schneid here tonight, in which he played a big role in, and clinching the playoff spot, which clearly meant something to him, Ken, as it was you who asked the question.
No, I didn't ask him about that one.
Didn't you ask him off the top about the playoffs?
Yeah, you asked him about.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, sorry. I thought you were talking about Clipperton's question.
Man. You're making me doubt you as a host, or you're making me doubt myself as a host. I should be doubting you as a reporter right now. Come on, Ken. Wake up.
At least you got on board with what I was saying about Heinola still being in the competition here. No, I mean, again, we've asked Blake Wheeler all along the line about points, and when he was getting 91 points, his answer has been the same the whole time. I mean, maybe at the end of his career, he's going to sit back and say, holy smokes, I had 1,000 points. That's impressive. But he doesn't care about milestones, and it's true. I mean, he referenced Boston. Do you think that was an accident that he referenced Boston, how it was reminding him of the Boston days? Well, what did Blake Wheeler miss out on when he left Boston?
Right.
The one thing that he wants to get more than anything else. So for me, that is completely genuine when he says he doesn't care about 800 points. The guy wants his name engraved on the Stanley Cup, and that's it.
Ken, would you allow me to take this conversation to Lowry, or would that be okay with you? You're
sure
okay
would.
with that?
Yeah.
Comes back into the lineup. You could tell it bugged him a lot that he was on for that game-winning goal against Ottawa. So for him to come out tonight, the kind of game he had, the hands that he had, I mean, he looked like a determined individual on this evening.
Yeah, outstanding effort. I mean, we expected this was the type of impact that he was going to have in coming back to the lineup. I mean, he was a physical force against Ottawa already. That element of their game had slipped for sure with his absence. And again, this is a guy who we saw it in the bubble last year. I mean, this is a guy that lives for playoff hockey. And he is going to be a difference maker in all of the important things. I mean, I think that it was important for that line to get going. Kopp, Lowry, and Appleton, I think there was a bit of a drop-off at times. I mean, again, we know that they weren't together for a stretch because of the injury. But, I mean, it was an impressive showing. There's no doubt about that. And again, I think that he's only going to continue to get better in terms of ramping up here for the postseason. But he's going to be one of their most important players when the playoffs begin.
Well, and we've used this space quite often to talk about just that and his importance, Ken, and where he can potentially take this team. Has there been an opportunity missed here? I guess maybe not an opportunity missed, but how well is this team positioned in the path forward, I guess, is the question that I want to ask. We've got these 4 games left. We've already touched on what potentially that Toronto game is going to mean. They're playing teams for the most part that are out of the playoffs. Is that a good thing or a bad thing at this stage? Would they need to have that game like you guys were suggesting against a team like Toronto where they could feel like they'd established something against the teams they're going to be playing in the playoffs? Or are they in a good spot right now just playing, Ottawa, Vancouver twice, teams that, it may not matter as much for, but just something to build that confidence with at this stage? Scotty.
Yeah, I don't really – I mean, ideally, I think they'd want to probably play Edmonton, Toronto to get, to have that sort of test going in. But this is a team that's still looking for its confidence, right? Like, I mean, again, I don't think one game restores everything for this team. I don't think it erases a 7-game losing streak. So if you can get that good feeling like they talk about, if you can, restore the confidence in some of the players who have lost it. I mean, I still think there's guys that need to start scoring. I mean, Paul Stastny, Pierre-Luc Dubois probably, would need a couple of goals. Kyle Connor. I mean, there's still opportunity here for other guys to kind of step up. And I don't think these are teams that are going to go away quietly either. I mean, if you look at Ottawa, they won, was it 5-1 tonight in Montreal? I mean, yeah. I think the Jets still need to prove to themselves that they can beat these teams. Like if you're still struggling against an Ottawa or a Vancouver in the playoffs, like
Ottawa's won 7 out of 9, Scotty. So 7-1-1 in their last 9.
But if you want to be a team that thinks that you can beat Toronto or Edmonton, you're going to have to beat Toronto or Edmonton, and you're losing to Vancouver or Ottawa. Like, if you can't find your game against teams that aren't in the playoffs, you better, that's it. I mean, pack it up and go home. And that's the thing. Like, again, I don't think everything changes over one win. I know everybody's happy in the chat. That's great. It's good for fans to be happy. But I think the reality here is that it's just one game. I mean, the reality after winning and losing game 7 of the 7-game losing streak wasn't that, it's just one more game. No, this is a trend that was happening. If the Jets lose to Ottawa on Saturday, what is this chat and everybody else going to think about this team again? It was just a one-off? Was the win an outlier, the way that they played the night an outlier, like going back to the Blake Wheeler comment? Again, I think these games are important for the Jets because they have to go out and replicate what they did tonight, what they did against Ottawa, except in Ottawa's game, you have to be, the Jets have to be opportunistic, and they are. Often the times they do get the opportunities, but they aren't pulling the trigger. And so they need some of their other guys to get going too. I mean, the Jets can't be a one-line team going into the playoffs. They can't be hoping that one line shows up every night in game 1, 2, 3, 4, up to maybe game 7 if they get there. They can't just rely on Connor Hellebuyck. Paul Maurice talked about it tonight. They need all 4 phases essentially of the game: forwards, or 5-on-5 play, special teams on both sides of the ledger there, and goaltending to make this thing work. And if they can't do that in the games leading up to the playoffs, I don't understand how anybody could expect them just to flip some sort of imaginary switch that doesn't exist and go and win a series out of nowhere. I know Blake Wheeler said after the game, anything can happen. Well, yeah, that's true, on the surface level. I know fans aren't delusional. I'm just, I'm trying to bring it. There is some reality here, and I know people get that. But I just think that the Jets have to show something going into the playoffs that they can do it. Because if they don't, I mean, I don't see how they can think, or anybody's going to think, that they can go and win, grind out a 7-game series against Toronto or Edmonton. It's just not going to happen.
Well, play that scenario out, Ken. No, hold on, Ken. Play that scenario out. What happens if the Jets go and lose the next game against a very hot Ottawa team? Do you think that tonight was enough of, Blake Wheeler had talked about the importance of getting that good feeling back, right? And the importance of the win to do that. Does this kind of erase and buy them a lot of time to, regardless of what happens in the next game or the game after that, to say that we've found the blueprint that works, and we just got to get back to that, and we're right there, just like they said that they'd been in the 2 previous games?
I mean, to me, this is the same point as I made in the pregame show. As much as some people aren't going to like it, the Jets are getting ready for game 1. They need to be healthy. They need to get Nikolai Ehlers back. They need to have Connor Hellebuyck sharp. Those are the only things that matter. They've given up 3 even-strength goals in 4 games, so it's not just a one-off for me. Since the 6-1 drubbing, which we all agree was their rock bottom, the Jets have improved in most of the areas that matter. Their special teams only came along in this last game, but their 5-on-5 has been their biggest issue this season, right? Their 5-on-5 play in terms of A, what they give up, and B, what they generate. They need to generate more, but their 5-on-5 play is improving. Does their 5-on-5 play against Ottawa or Calgary or Vancouver matter against how they're going to play against Edmonton or Toronto. They can't measure themselves against those other teams and say this is what it's going to be like, because they're not going to face a dynamic talent like the way they are going to be when they have to shut down or contain, if that's even possible, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. There's no comparison in the games that they're going to play for the rest of the year. However, the template is what matters. And again, I agree with you, Scott. It's only one step. But again, that's how they have to play. And they need to be a little bit better in terms of generating offense. But in terms of what they give up, that's how they have to play. You said it yourself. If you don't give up slot shots, that's the template.
Right, but don't you think they need to do that over the next 4 games to kind of show that they can actually do it to themselves? Because if you just base it on one game, or if you just base it on...
that's not what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm with you. But again, to me, people want... Okay, so it's a non-playoff team. The Jets aren't going to beat Calgary, Ottawa, Vancouver 8-0. That's just not the way it works. I mean, I understand some people want that.
It's about
they need to do it more than one time. I agree totally with you. But the fact that they have not been giving up much 5-on-5, that is what they need to continue to try to do.
Okay, let me pose this question to you guys in a little bit of a different way, because I think it's kind of what you guys are talking about right now. But the one thing that I don't think a lot of us were talking about when it was happening is that 7-game losing streak starts with a loss to Edmonton, and then 2 losses to Toronto, and then 2 more losses to Edmonton, and then throw in a 6th loss against Montreal. So 6 of their losses come against the best teams of the league. So I mean, Scott brings up a good point in that we've clearly separated the wheat from the chaff in this division. The 3 teams below, I mean, granted, Ottawa, let's give them the credit that they're due. 7-9 wins. They're on fire. Knocked off the Canadiens tonight. Looked impressive doing it. So let's give them that credit. But I mean, based on where they were in the season, this is 2 different divisions. One, winners, and 3 obvious losers here. And so the Jets, their 7-game streak coincides. Maybe this wasn't the Jets being as bad as they were or falling down as bad as they did. Are we just seeing what the Jets look like against really good teams? And tonight's an example of what they look like against bad teams. Scott?
Maybe. I mean, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility either, right? Because, again, like you kind of alluded to, the Jets haven't shown it against, those teams in recent memory, other than when they ended the road trip against the Toronto Maple Leafs without Austin Matthews, right? And so... I don't know. I struggle to think that the Jets can just fall asleep tonight, wake up in the playoffs, and figure it out. I don't believe that's to be true. I don't see that happening. Whether or not Nikolai Ehlers comes back or not, this team has to learn to play the way that they played tonight consistently. So, hey, go ahead and show it over the next 4 games. Do they have to win all of them? I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, because I think they can lean on an Ottawa game where they lose 2-1 and still, be happy about that. But at the end of the day, I think you also have to go into, I guess Ottawa comes here on Saturday, and into that game and think, well, yeah, okay, we should have beat them, the last time we played them. Now we need to beat them this time because, we're building. And if you're building towards the playoffs, I think the building also includes beating and winning games. And, there's no real excuses at this point to lose to teams below you. I mean, this is what it is for the Jets if they want, because otherwise this is just I think everybody thinks at this point that the Jets or the Oilers are going to play the Maple Leafs in the second round, and that's going to be the ticket out of the North Division. If the Jets want to, burst that bubble and be in that second round series, they got to show that they can do it. I don't think that there's this magical switch that needs to that's going to get flipped. I don't think that the Jets are thinking just game 1 of the playoffs yet. I think if they are, that's a mistake. I guess that's all I'll say.
Ken, here, let's ask this.
My feeling has not changed on this subject. Again, I'm not saying the Jets are perfect. They're not.
But that's the problem. Like they're so far from perfect that they need to do. I hate this whole term, play the right way. I really hate it, but they have to do that. Like the way that the Jets, and I think it's different for every team. Playing the right way means something different for every team. But the Jets need to show it over the 4 games because I don't think it changes in the playoffs. Like I don't think their game. How can anybody believe their game changes in the playoffs if they just go and crap the bed for these last 4 games? I just don't see it.
Again, I don't think it's easy to assume they're going to be bad all of a sudden. Again, I'm not saying they're going to be great, but
that's what they've been for the last month, essentially. I mean, if you were going to go back to the 15 or 20 games that Paul Stastny said, have they been good for the last 2 months?
No, but for 3 even strength goals in 4 games, it is not just a one-off. Is all I'm saying. The Jets. Right, you said recent memory. The last game, the last road. Hang on. The last road game against the Leafs was their template. It seems like it's eons ago, but it is really only 9 games ago.
But here's the thing: it was. I get that, but the problem is that the team has essentially admitted. Even Blake Wheeler has now said it. They haven't played for 20 games. That's more than a third of the season, Kenny. Like you can't dismiss the fact that this team essentially rested on their laurels for quite some time, and then all of a sudden is going to fix it. They have to show. I think they have to show it for themselves. You don't think that Paul Stastny wants to see this team do something that it hadn't done in those 15 to 20 games? I think that guy knows what needs to be done. I think Blake.
Got so hot he took his internet down.
Broke the internet. Yeah, broke the internet.
Crashed the internet. You know where I was going to go? If he gets back, we'll get back to that. You know where I was going to go after this, though, and it's where I wanted to end when you shut me down in our pregame show. And we'll get Scott's take on this if he gets back into the show here. But what's your take on who the Jets would be better off playing? I know it's that old adage, you don't want to never hope for a team because that's the team that'll end up taking you out. But who do you think they're better suited to play?
I mean, there's no easy matchup. I mean, I don't know that we talked about this before. I mean, I think you could make a case for either team. I think that both teams have playoff demons. I think that in many ways, Jack Campbell is unproven when it comes to playoff hockey. Freddie Anderson will have a chance to, I think, play against the Manitoba Moose. Welcome back, Scott.
Kenny got me so hot my router blew up.
I know.
Well, I know. These things happen. These things happen. Anyway. I think that the Leafs are the deeper team. The Oilers have better goaltending, and they have Connor McDavid, who right now is the best player in the NHL. Neither matchup would be one that teams would be knocking down the door on, but I think the better matchup for them is Edmonton, because I don't think the Oilers are as deep as the Leafs, and the Oilers also had a recent serious fumble in terms of what happened to them against Chicago. Again, it's maybe it's an outlier, maybe those guys are ready and they learned from their painful exit. But in terms of who I think is better, I think the Leafs are the best team in the North right now. And I think right now the Oilers are the second best team in the North right now. And I think the Jets are the third best team in the North right now. If the Jets want to get out of the North, they're going to have to find a way to try and beat both those teams. Can they do that? That's up to them to show us whether they can or not.
T-Cone Paulie, it's good to have you back. He says, Sean, does it matter? They have to beat both teams now to win the North. I do think it matters, and here's why it matters. This is exactly what we've been talking about. This is a Jets team that is going to go in my opinion, regardless of what happens over these next 4 games, with the seed of doubt that's been planted through this 7 games, fresh in their minds, right? And the more distance they can put between that situation and them, the better. And so it does matter, because the better matchup is what they want in the first round, so that they can get their best matchup and maybe overcome that matchup. And then if they've got to go through the other team at that point, or when they do have to go through that team at the other point, they've got some confidence behind them. I got to say, I'm fully on board with Ken. I know it looks, after losing 6 straight games to the Oilers, and our camera guy, Corey from Edmonton, I've seen him making some comments here. And he'll totally disagree with this, but he and I were talking on the phone earlier today. I do think that the Oilers are the better matchup for the Winnipeg Jets. I know they lost 6 straight games, but there should be a point at which, if you can shut down Connor McDavid, and maybe you can't, the way he's going, like seriously, maybe you can't. But I mean, if there's a way that you can get to that, there should be depth that you can take advantage of in this series if you can get the Jets playing to their maximum capabilities. If you can get all four lines rolling and contributing, they should be better off. What is the thing that I think is the Jets' Achilles heel so far this season? It's been their defense has not been able to shut down the elite players. Well, the problem with Toronto and Edmonton is they both have those elite players. But to your point, Ken, what Toronto has is those elite players and a deeper forward group, a good defensive group. Their goaltending may be a problem, but I do see there being an easier game plan to go after against the Edmonton Oilers than there would be against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I would caution against anyone thinking that the Jets have had a great amount of success against the Toronto Maple Leafs this year. Two of their wins against them are wins that they essentially stole through goaltending, or at least three of the points that they got against them from that. And Ken, we've talked about this time and time again. I really don't think that the Jets have fully seen who this Toronto Maple Leafs team that they're going to be playing in the playoffs are. I mean, Foligno's been there for a while. He came in, what you saw from him as a Jets fan is him just walking into the room and trying to figure this out. Look at what we're talking about with Pierre-Luc Dubois and where he's tried to fit into this lineup and the troubles they've had for him fitting in. What you saw from Nick Foligno isn't Nick Foligno fitting in at his best. It's him walking in the door and being like, "Hi guys, I'm Nick. Let's go play some hockey." Now, a couple of weeks later, we're going to see something entirely different out of him. So, to your point,
he's been hurt too. He's been banged up now, though. Too. He's going to miss at least 2 games. So, but they're going to get Hyman back, who has been excellent against the Jets.
Well, exactly. And let's be honest. The Toronto Maple Leafs took a look at we've said this at the beginning. The Montreal Canadiens took a run at them at the beginning of the year. Bye-bye, they said. The Edmonton Oilers did it next, and they dispatched the Oilers. The last team to take a run at them was the Winnipeg Jets. And what's happened since? How many points are the Jets behind them? There's no competition. That's a team that grabbed this division by the throat and said, "See you later." And the Jets were just the first 2 games in that process of them doing that. The Toronto Maple Leafs team that people see in the playoffs, and we've talked about it, Ken, they still have to get over their demons, but it's
2004.
A beast.
2004 is a long time, but they are the best equipped to handle that, and they've had enough heartache that they should be ready to put that behind them.
Scott, the original question I asked, and I'd love your thoughts on it, is who do you think the Jets are better positioned to beat of those 2 teams?
It's probably Edmonton. That's a good question. Now, I think if you can go into game 1 against the Toronto Maple Leafs and take the first game against that team, I mean, the pressure on Toronto we've talked about this before. I think the pressure on Toronto is going to be is higher than any other team, at least in the North Division, and probably across the league. I mean, again, this is a team that has loaded up on talent to try and win a Stanley Cup, right? And so I think if the Jets could go into Toronto and split the first game of the series, I think the tough part about even that, though, is that you just don't have the fans in the building. I think that's going to make a huge difference in this playoffs for Toronto. I think Toronto doesn't have to worry about the boo birds and stuff like that if they start getting low. It's just not going to be there for them in the first couple of rounds. And so I think it is probably Edmonton. I think if they can just figure out a way, I think you get the body on McDavid, get the body on Draisaitl. You take those 2 out of the game, you can even up the series a little bit. I think Mike Smith will be a tough. He's a tough out. But I think if you can get to him again, I think the thing is with Edmonton is you gotta rattle them, right? And I think if the Jets go into the playoffs feeling like they have nothing to lose, I think that's going to be the best mentality that they take into the playoffs. I don't know what it is internally right now on expectations. Obviously, those guys want to win. They think they can win the Stanley Cup. I'm sure there's guys in the room that's what they think. But I think the Jets need to play in the first round, whoever they do end up playing, like a team that doesn't matter. Because I think the pressure on Edmonton, we've talked about that before, on both those teams is high, that you can kind of take advantage of that as well. So I don't know. I think, like I said, I think it's Edmonton, but I think it doesn't matter if you can go into either of those teams and rattle them in game 1 or game 2. especially on the road. I think that turns the tide a little bit. But the Jets also have to play a certain style of game to do that, right? You can't give up. Paul Maurice said it tonight. You can't go into, you can't trade chances with these two teams because McDavid will kill you, and Austin Matthews or Mitch Marner will kill you. And I know the Jets have some killers on their team of their own, but they're not the same, right? And so, Connor McDavid can score 4 points and just take over games. Like we've seen it. I mean, this guy wins games by himself. I mean, if he didn't have to pass it to other people or get somebody to give him the puck, honestly, I think this guy could win games without, other guys around him at times. It's just, he's so dynamic. It's ridiculous. But I think you got to get into the wheelhouse. You got to rattle either one of those teams when you play them. Play like you don't really care. Not that you don't care, but like the fact that play like you have nothing to lose, because the Jets really don't at this point, right? Like, I mean, either you're going to lose, get bounced in the first round, or you're not. And nobody's going to have you peg you as the favorite going into it. So use some of those things. Use the mentality of the underdog. Use that, because I think the Jets have to extract kind of every mental and physical thing they can going into a series, and use those against the team that they're playing, because there's going to be immense pressure on both of those other teams to push into the later rounds of the playoffs. And if you can take advantage of that, well, maybe all bets are off. And I think if the Jets can get out of the first round, I also think all bets are off, because if you can show that you can beat one of those teams, then I think I don't think they become the favorite against Toronto or against Edmonton and such, but the confidence they will instill in themselves of beating either one of those teams in the first round would be massive, right? You're back on track. You're back. It's different at that point. But again, the first round is obviously going to be key. And I think the first couple games of rattling a team is going to lay the groundwork of what a series will look like.
Yeah, for me, I think that they would benefit from playing the Oilers in the first round, because they're a team that needs to get their feet underneath them. Same with the Leafs, you could argue that as well. But having that recent disappointment, I think that, like you said, Hellebuyck goes in and tosses up a Vezina type of game, and they do shut down McDavid. All of a sudden, things will get tight. But yeah, at the same time, this is very simple. We've heard it a lot during the losing streak. The Jets were to the point where they felt like they had to play an almost perfect game, because their offense had dried up. That's what it's going to take in the playoffs. They're going to have. There's not any margin for error. You can't be turning over pucks. You can't be taking bad penalties. You can't be giving up goals, soft goals. Not that that's a regular occurrence, but those things can't happen.
This season, though, right?
They can't happen against those teams, because it's like baseball, the analogy. Like right now, the Blue Jays are giving too many opponents extra outs because of bad defense, right? The Jets can't allow that to happen to have any chance of winning, right? So I'm not up here saying the Jets are a cakewalk to make it through. That's not the case. They need to play a near perfect game against either one of those teams in order to advance.
And let's face it, like Connor Hellebuyck needs to do something he hasn't done before and take a series by the horns and win it too. I think a lot of this is going to rest on Connor Hellebuyck's shoulders. He's talked about wanting to get back to this, wanting to do it again. I think he needs to show that this time, right? And I think maybe it was you or Jeff in the last game show brought it up. We haven't ever seen that from Connor Hellebuyck, right? We've seen him.
I still disagree. I think the series against Nashville, to knock out a President's Trophy winner.
No, I'm siding with Jeff on this one, because I know he said Pekka Renny crapped the bed in 4 of those games, right? I mean, he was pulled in game 7.
Not in 4 of those games. In game 7, he really struggled.
You can't say that he outdueled.
He got pulled in 2 of the 4 losses, did he not?
Right, and in game 7, right? So Connor Hellebuyck didn't have to do a lot in game 7 because Pekka Renny was gone within the first period. So I'm just saying.
I agree with that. That's not a case of Connor Hellebuyck winning that series. That's a case of Pekka Renny losing that series.
If you watched the TSN broadcast tonight, you would have seen the Jets Legends series, and I believe it's game 3 of this series. The Jets went down 3-0 in that game. It wasn't Connor Hellebuyck that dug them back out of it. It was their offense. So I don't agree with that. I think Connor Hellebuyck has to show that he is going to be a playoff goalie on top of a regular season goalie.
Ken, I want to ask you this question because we've got some information on this. Have the bubble cities been decided yet for the playoffs? nothing definitive, right? But I mean, from what we understand, is there's not going to be bubble cities in the first couple rounds. But at this stage, I think there would be an expectation that the Canadian team would find itself in a host or a bubble city, based on what we know now of the rules at the border.
Yeah, I mean, that's the expectation, that they would go to a city that would be, within range, or I mean, within range of who the team, whatever team advances from the north would be playing, in terms of that other division. So there's been lots of talk about California, or I guess something central, maybe Chicago, depending on. I mean, Arizona's been brought up as well. So lots of options still, but it would be for the conference final.
Well, and even then it gets interesting, right? Because it gets ranked teams 1 through 4
That's what I
as
mean,
they go into the last 4. So, I mean, you could be playing a team on the Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah, it's true. And there too, there'd be plenty of options there for centralizing or whatever else. But I don't think that there will be, I don't think it's a Final Four bubble like the MLB. I think they went for they went to bubbles for the conference finals. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, certainly interesting. And again, the COVID situation is not great in Alberta or Ontario. So, I mean, I don't think there have been any final decisions made in terms of what the North is going to be doing, but I think the expectation is that there will be travel within the teams themselves in the first round or two.
I mean, so essentially, out of the final 4 teams, as it stands right now, the expectation, unless things change with the border, would be that 3 teams would be playing out of their home rink, and the North Division team would be playing out of a host rink. I'm wondering your thoughts on if you're that team, what level of selection you get to kind of help choose the rink that you think you may play best. And I also wonder how much of a disadvantage you think that puts it to the team from the North at, if they're the only one that's not playing in their home barn where they know all the bounces, know all the creeks and the boards, and, just the comfort factor.
Yeah, I mean, it's just impossible to know. I mean, I think that any team that gets to the Final Four is going to be thrilled to be playing no matter where they're playing. And secondly, it's a bit of a dog's breakfast because they haven't seen those other teams. They're going to be good, whoever makes the Final Four. I mean, I understand people continue to say, oh, the North Division's no good. But, well, in terms of defending, well, I mean, nobody's claiming there's going to be a lot of Norris candidates, but that's not the high-end talent in the North is legit. I mean, it's been legit no matter what division they've played in. So I'm not one of those people that says that the North Division team is going to be out in 4 games. But, I mean, again, that's up to them to show whoever gets there.
Yeah, I love this comment by Energy 21 Design. If Winnipeg makes it to the 3rd round, they should relocate to Atlanta. What better way to regain home ice advantage?
Yeah, I'd say that's about a 0% chance of that. 0% chance of that happening.
Love the idea, though. Don't.
Yeah, I'm not raining on it.
On that parade.
I would be willing to bet a rather large sum that the NHL is not planning on going to Atlanta
to a non-NHL
soon.
city. Yeah, I get it. Hey, Scotty, really appreciate you coming on the show and bringing it as usual and sparking up your own with the flute, sparking up your own memes or whatever they're calling these days.
Now somebody's got Scotty's flute account or whatever.
There you go.
And it's already got a picture of me drinking from my flute.
I know, they're quick. It was quick.
I've accomplished what
technology, baby, technology.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I got my own YouTube account by some fan who
came here
loves
for.
Me. Yeah.
Hey, that's how you live forever, Scotty.
This show is my springboard to fame and fortune, right? Like, so, and then I'll have you guys on my show with my flute or whatever.
There you go, Scotty's flute evening. That's perfect. We've got our own vessels that we can bring on the show. We want to thank everyone for showing up here tonight. Really appreciate your time. Game on Friday. Before that, Ken and I are going to have our weekly magazine style podcast. We've got Ron McLean and Chris Simpson coming on with us.
What a show.
Yeah, it'll be great
Ron
stuff.
McLean, man. Like, I love Ron. Like, great story.
Great storytelling. I got a great story about Chris Simpson early in my career when I worked with her for the first time that I'd love to bust out. It'll be good stuff. And other than that, just keep hanging with us for our Instagram pregame shows and our post games, which you can watch, which you are watching right here. Best place to check us out, which I see most of you are, is on our YouTube channel. If you haven't gone there and clicked subscribe, do that. It's the best way to get to our stuff here and see our great guests like Scotty that we have. Thank you so much. I'm glad for the levity on the show tonight. I'm glad you brought it again as an audience, took us off our game a number of times, which I absolutely love when you do. Hopefully you keep it up, and we will see you in the next game. Bye for now, everyone.